I'm Shane Nyland, and my co host is Blake Musser. And these stories you're about to hear are from Weapons Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Marine Division, about the events surrounding and directly from the mouths of the people who were in Ramadi 2004. This is part 2 of our interview with the 1st Weapons Company Lioness, Ranie Ruthig.
Okay. Yeah, some of the first ones that I remember the Lioness is coming out on, I know were, at least I have a memory of it, I can't remember who it was now, but they went out to a school. We were dropping off some stuff and had come out to talk to the kids or something. I can't remember exactly how it all worked out, but it was before everything kicked off.
That was Nava. That would have been Nava and Perry is who you would have gotten with. So okay. That would have been the Nava Perry team. Usually went to school. So little shot off Mexican. That man, well, she was Puerto Rican actually. Don't say she was Mexican. That she would kick my ass for that. I know better. Sorry, whoever I offended. I know better. So, and she runs a mile a minute. She is as short as her mouth is long. I mean, it's a sweet girl. And then Perry, she was a taller blonde, but not taller than Shannon and I. So that would have been Nava and Perry. That you probably would have been that, or maybe Moreno. So it would have been no, she was Colombian. But
that sounds vague. Again, it's trying to pull up 20 years ago and
exactly.
and it wasn't like I was trying to make friends with anybody. It was just acknowledging that this was happening.
Yep.
And so
you guys did I remember that you guys did like a school run for.
Yeah. It was, I mean, as Nyland did too. I mean, that first part of when we came over and we were doing like Sasso, and we really believed that we were winning hearts and minds and stuff like that. It was a lot of dropping off, handing out school soccer balls and getting generators to places and things like that. So that's my first. I
remember that because we were out. I was out, but I was with 1-5 those days because and I only remember being out. Nothing happened, but I remember that was one of those eerie days that everything got quiet because it was almost like they were testing things out because they could tell our vehicles and they got used to us and they knew how we operated. And it was one of the days because you had 7 tons out. It was like one of your first time 7 tons were out, if I remember right.
Because possibly.
Because the one thing I always remember when doing missions is watching kids. And I remember the soccer balls. Because if I don't remember if we were out with you guys or if I was with 1-5, but I remember being with 1-5 for some odd reason. And I'll tell you the only reason why I remember I'll tell you my screaming like a girl story. And I think this all plays in. But I remember all of a sudden, kids having soccer balls and wanting stuff, and all of a sudden the street went quiet and there was no more kids. And I went, ooh, fuck. Because once you lose kids, you're like, this is a bad sign. And the only reason I remembered that specific day and that it was Nava and I think it was Moreno that was out with you, it wasn't Perry, was Shannon and I went out with 1-5. And Colonel Cambry had a really cool driver, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, and I wish I do because he was super cool. The one thing no one knew about him, he spoke Arabic. He was a U.S. citizen. He had immigrated and got his citizenship and joined the Army. That was why he joined the Army, was to get a citizenship. So I thought it was really kind of cool. I enjoyed talking to him. And usually Cambry kept us with him if we went out. So I loved talking to that guy. It was really fun. And we were on they told us it was, we always called it cash missions for cash and cache missions when we thought it was going to be guns. That was how I kind of differentiated because I'm like, it's the same fucking thing. Cash is a cash. And they're like, no, this is how we're going to differentiate. But if it's going to be cash and intel, it's going to be called a cache. If it's going to be guns and something else, we're going to call it a cache. And so this was going to be a cache mission. So we're digging through shit. And we're on this little farm, and I'm like, and I am literally sitting here, and once again, we're not having to guard the interpreter because we didn't have to take one out because we got specialists, whatever his name was. And so we're standing there, and we're standing in, I guess, by their little barn area, and I'm basically kicking rocks, I'm like, doing this pile, and all of a sudden, the guys are going through everything, so that was pretty nice. I'm like, I'm getting my hands dirty. This is gross. And all the guys are digging everything through, and all of a sudden, I swear, I saw black fingers coming up underneath that. I kicked it as hard as I can. I screamed with the girl. I brought my gun up. I'm like, you got him, fucking God, you goddamn motherfucker! Everybody's all up around me. It was lizards. I was really brave, and it was just big old black lizards coming up, but they all came out like a hand, and then everybody laughed at me and made fun of me. And I remember that mission. That was about the same time, and that's why I couldn't go with the Marines. Is I was with 1-5.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
That's
pretty strong story there, right? Yeah.
We've all had our fair share of embarrassing ourselves over there. That's for sure.
I'm so mad. They all laughed at me, and I'm like, and Shannon, and you never wanted to do anything around Shannon because I swear that girl has a memory she won't forget. And don't worry, it's a lizard. I had lizards in my damn bunk. They bring them in. I'm like, you fuckers.
It's funny.
Oh, you.
So as far as passing along all this stuff and this being sort of a new mission, did they ever bring you in for like a post-op, we're going to debrief everything and write this down and talk about how good this is working or how bad it's working?
Every mission we did a back brief. We did a backwash every mission to see if this was still a sustainable thing, whether it was with 1-5, 116, or the Marines. We did a backwash every single time.
Interesting.
So that is why we ended up not doing a lot of missions with 116, because honestly, they weren't nice. They were just, it's like, I think that was a mission I ended up riding with bodies. I'm like, can I get a truck that isn't full of dead bodies? I mean,
sure.
Come on, I can ride in some bad places. I've ridden with the dogs. I've ridden with interpreters. Do I have to be riding in the morgue? They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, they've made us ride with the dead bodies. And they're like, yeah, maybe you guys shouldn't be going with them anymore. It's like, yeah, I prefer not to. And they're like, yeah, no. That
along the same lines of Nyland's question, did you take it to the next level? Did you get brought in to help with any of the pre-planning ever on going out and this is what we're going to do and what we can help? How we can help, or is it just more once you got out there, you just rolled with the punches?
It was certain missions. So the one mission I remember actively having an active participation in, it was over. Do you guys remember the glass factory?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
There was a scientist over there. There's a female scientist, and she got word out that she wanted to talk to somebody, but she couldn't talk to somebody. She had intel, and this was right before everything went down. So a lot of the intel around April timeframe, I think, came from that same time. And I'd been doing a lot of missions in and out and everything, and I ended up going on that mission, and Captain Penry's like, all right, who do you think needs to go with you? She's like, you need to pick somebody. And she's like, and while Shannon has her qualities, going into a more delicate mission would not be Shannon's high point. And that's when I looked at Captain Penry. I said, who's leading the charge on this? And she's like, oh, actually, this is going to be, I think it was Colonel Cambry's going to be on that. And I said, so it wouldn't be outrageous for Captain Lioness going in, would it? And she's like, you really want me to do a Lioness? I said, I think you should do a Lioness mission. So it was pretty cool. So I got to pick my Lioness buddy that day, and I made it to be Captain Penry. Come with me.
That's cool.
And she said, you know what, I'm going to do it. She's like, put you guys out there. No, she's gone out. She was going out on missions too. So it's not like she was not a commander to sit back and, do as I say, as I, eat my crumpet. She was out there with us. So she was a very cool commander. So she went out with us, and we sat down with Colonel Cambry and her and I and, the main leaders to how we were going to go in. And it was, we were talking to them because we were going to we strung it to the male, whoever was in charge over there, that we were needing supplies for our military base. We were looking to get stuff. That was how we were going to get into this factory. And so they're like, all right, no, okay, you guys are going to have to wear your hair looser. So it's very obvious, so it's like at that time, I think by the time that we got done there, my hair had grown down. It was probably mid back. So we kind of had to floof your hair. So it was kind of like old lady bun style. So it was like, down to your collar, but still up. And Captain Pendrake had a mess of red hair. So, I mean, we had like these low, weird buns. And it's like, man, one strong wind, my hair's out, and you're like, constantly messing with this. And they're like, when you get in the buildings, if you feel comfortable enough, take your Kevlars off, walk around. He's like, are you guys comfortable enough with walking around with somebody instead of each other? Because we'll try to separate you. He's, I'll take Colonel Cambry. I said, yeah. Then I took the little interpreter guy. I'm like, yeah, I'll take your driver. And he's like, oh, okay, if you're comfortable with them. He's like, well, that actually does even better, because if she comes up and talks to you, we'll have an interpreter with you, and nobody will know that we have an interpreter. I said, perfect. And so off we wandered. And, so we got some lowly funky, and we just wandered that glass site. Like, we're taking in the sights while the big wigs, are doing their meeting. And so she never did come up to me. She ended up going up to, Captain Pendry and giving them their intel, which I'm really glad about, because I really didn't want to be, here's all this intel. I'd be like,
right.
So I was much happier that a captain got it than some little lowly E6. So, but it was really cool that I got to be part of that planning process of how are we going to get the intel, how are we going to get people, what moving parts we're going to go in there, what's the plan. So that was one. But like now I do remember going over into the Marines and being brought in and saying, hey, here's the night missions. This is what's going to happen. This is where the Lionesses are going to be, because they would bring me in so I could tell the girls what was going on. So I do remember being that, but not so much that I got any say on what was going to happen.
Sure. But at least you're getting some briefing.
Yeah. You're riding with the dogs. I mean, you guys like to go with the dogs. You guys are riding with the dogs. I'm like, all right. Or Doc. I really liked your guys' Doc. He's a good guy too. That's when I found out you guys carry morphine on you. I'm like, are you kidding me? You guys get morphine? I medics don't get shit. Here's some Motrin.
Yeah, that's too funny. Well, I guess I never really thought that, due to your mission, and especially when you were as the Lioness, you would have probably gotten lumped in with the interpreters a lot then.
A ton. We ended up being more or less their personal guard a lot. Okay. Especially, when they got into areas that, off we go, we're going, not so much with you guys, but a lot with 1-5. Okay. Hey, we got to go. We're going to go chase these bad guys down. Keep an eye on that guy. Not so much because they couldn't carry weapons.
Sure.
So, we can't go after the firefight. So guard the interpreter. It's like, so how's your day going? Mm-hmm. So we ended up meeting a lot of cool interpreters. I mean, that was cool. What's your family like? Spent a lot of time in trucks with them.
Sure.
Like I said, the dog handlers. We met some cool dog handlers. The medics, rode with a lot of the medics. So, it's kind of like your support. That's where we ended up in with.
Yeah. We had a rough go of our interpreters at the beginning. That was really rough. But then towards the middle end there, we had a handful that were really solid. But
I remember you guys got some trashy ones. Yeah. You remember that?
Well, we had a couple.
We had to kill two of them.
Yeah. Because I remember you guys coming over to use some of ours.
Yes.
Could we borrow some interpreters? Just remember that because I remember being on one of the, and I'm like, it was the 1-5 interpreter. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, I go where they tell me. And I'm like, oh, well, you stand out because you're in the same uniform I'm at. That was
Yeah.
fun. We were watching the fall of Fallujah. You know, they're showing all the, and the fall, I think it was a History Channel. In the fall of Fallujah, the Marines are all down, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, here's an Army uniform. Hey, I think that's me. Let me go. Go, go. That was the interpreter. You know, it was funny because you could spot, and they're like, why is there, you know, I can't remember why are there different uniforms? Those are Army, those are Marines. And I said, those are support staff with the Marines. And they're like, really? Yeah, they're usually an interpreter. I said, or they borrowed somebody. I said, watch, if they're female, they're lionesses. And they're like, really?
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we kind of jumped into this. That made me think that we didn't really set this up very well in the very beginning, but just to state this now, you guys started the Lioness program, and so like the unit that you were a part of, like this had not happened at all, and so the late part of the 03, you're a part of that first team that then set the wave that came later. And you guys got in a little bit of, I don't think you got in trouble, but I think your higher ups got in a little bit of trouble when they found out that because this wasn't completely sanctioned, if I know the story correctly.
So it was not. And Colonel Brinkley and Captain Cambry may or may not. They're like, are you sending females into combat? And they're like, there are no females. We are not actively sending females into combat. Like that walk around? That was pretty good. Because they were not. And they're like, if they just happen to be attached to a unit that sees combat, they have to protect themselves. And they're like, yeah, that came down big. And they were on CNN. It got back to CNN and everything with that. I mean, they're like, there are females in combat. And we're like, oops. Mom, you know, I remember calling back to my mom, and she's like, hey, Ranie. And I'm like, hey, Mom, what's going on? You know, your 2:00 in the morning phone calls. She's like, I was watching the news, and I went, no, yeah, what was on the news? They're saying women are in combat. I said, well, Mom, you know, if you think about it, since Molly Pitcher, there's been a woman in combat even back in 1776. She's like, don't you back talk me, girl. I went, well, she's like, I said, Ma, you don't really want the answer to that. And she's like, God damn it. I told you to go over there and just fix shit. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, she's like, you better come home in one piece with all your fingers and toes. I'm working on it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if you're on a wrecker crew, I mean, there were several times that we got hit where we needed to bring a wrecker out, and that was not a non-active environment.
No, the wrecker got hit on the way out. Yeah,
our wrecker got hit on the way out. We actually circled it, how many bullet holes we had, and of course, once again, we had hillbilly armor on that booger. You know, and I sat there and said, well, this is great. The windows are down. I'm gunning out of it. You know, so I got, you know, the little patch of, you know, what they kept calling it, the meat patch, or the dog tag area that everyone got tattooed up.
That's right. Yeah.
That was
our meat tags. Yeah,
that was tagged up, and like my boot area, I'm like, I am a sitting duck out here, but it's cool. At least, you know, it's nice and cool up here. Yeah. We went on a lot. We ended up, we had to go out on pick up a couple, and that was horrible because our wreckers do not have feet for your 7-ton. You know, they'll pick them up, but the Army wrecker, we don't have 7-ton attachments because, you know, that's not our fleet.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
I do remember that. I remember them welding up and rigging up some kind of weird apparatus.
My God. And we just looked at it, and I'm like, and me and my driver are looking at it, and I'm like, well, what are we doing? And he's like, we doing some chain shit. And I'm like, all right, here we go. This backyard's bullshit happening here. You know, we got our stinger down, and we just started wrapping chains for days. He's like, we're just going to have to keep it going slow. And he's like, hope it holds. And we got back, and we had a kick-ass welder. And I remember him taking and making some hillbilly feet just in case. We never did end up using them, and we left them for the next crew behind us. But we
Nice.
made hillbilly feet to match in. We use because we had a spare set of 5-ton feet that we
Nice.
may or may not have acquired from somewhere. But like, yeah, we're not doing this again. But yeah, we did a lot of missions with the wrecker that I'm like, God, I can't believe we did that. I don't remember if you guys were part of the big push. It was after the fall of Fallujah, and it was a big, huge mission. And we brought everything out to start putting barriers down everywhere. And that's it was right after, maybe it was right at the election time. So yeah, it was right around April timeframe after that. And we took anything with a crane out. And we put the Alaska barriers down, the HESCO bastings down. And I mean, we were out every night for like 3 days with all of our 88s and everything, just laying barriers. And I'm thinking you guys were out. I mean, that was another big joint mission, but it was not a mission with that, was combat related. It was more of a sustainment mission.
Yeah, I have memories of that. I think we were doing I think we performed some outer cordon stuff just to keep people pushed back while you were doing it.
We basically shut down the marketplace during that time because the majority of the barriers they were putting up were at the government center. At least this is what I remember.
Yep, the government center and the police department.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those barriers came in handy for Nyla and I later on. That's
because it was and the only reason I remember we ended up talking about that mission is we were talking to our chief warrant officer, because I can't remember, you guys call chiefs different things, so I just have to remember chief warrant officer for us. The other day, Shannon and I and one of my he was the 88 TC, and he's like, hey, I found this picture. What were we doing? And I looked, and it was all of us, everybody in maintenance. And it was a big maintenance mission. And I'm like, what the hell and I remember, and then they're like, all right, that was the barrier mission. And it's like, okay. And it was, and it ended up being, it's like when all of maintenance went out. And I remember being out on that mission, and we're laying barriers out everywhere. And I'm like thinking, man, you could just cripple our battalion right now from maintenance if you took this area out, because all of our maintenance is out here. From our warrant officers out here, our BMOs out here, I'm out here, our motor sergeant out here. And I'm like, and all of our little soldiers are out here. I'm like, you could cripple the maintenance section right now. Because we're just laying barriers, and then we're laying bastings everywhere too, and just running dirt. I do remember it was just days, and God, it was dirty work.
It ended up being important. I mean, the government center was attacked multiple times throughout the summer, and then later during the handoff in September.
Yep.
There were some special forces units that came up and rubbed up in our AO. We had an ODA attachment that was north and then came into Ramadi a lot, and we had a SEAL unit. Did you ever end up getting attached to them for anything?
We did not. We did talk to them. We didn't know exactly what we knew the SEALs. I mean, they're hard to miss.
They made sure that they introduced themselves.
Yes, they do. With their beard and their stuff hair, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's the only reason you went as a SEAL. We had Green Berets. There was more. There was CIA on the ground.
Yes. Yeah.
We talked to the CIA. I remember having to talk to them about the missions. And I don't remember, there was somebody, we just got called that they were OGAs, other government agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but yeah, I remember the CIA and I remember the SEALs. The SEALs let everybody know. They had done talking with us and went over to the mess hall. We are SEALs. Good Lord.
Well, some of the raids, some of the quartering kicks that we did when we were bringing you guys out was coordinations with special forces also. And so there was some interesting missions there.
We always saw more after the Army times and the Marine times with the Band of Sisters. We saw more that started getting a little interested in us, and I think that's when the word was getting back that we weren't supposed to be out there. and everything else. And I don't, and I can't remember how many female Marines would get just pissed. Why are they using soldiers for this? This should be a Marine mission, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you guys are a bunch of sissies. No, I did not say that. Because I knew the whole reason behind it. It truly is where you are and what, your unit's willing to take the brunt for, truly.
Sure. So once that came out, did you, I guess I don't remember the Lioness was coming out much in the summer. Did the missions dry up then for you guys?
Oh, we went out, probably weekly. We'd go out weekly. Not so much with the Marines. We went a lot more with the 1-5. So luckily it did dry up some, and I didn't have to do as many missions because then we were on the records a lot. I mean, because then we were going to Anaconda, and that's when we got ambushed going to Anaconda, and we cleared out the road going there. And that was pretty cool though, because we took you guys don't know what it is, but it's called an AVLB. So it's an old 60 tank, and instead of a gun on it, they put a bridge on it, right?
Oh yeah.
Vehicle launching bridge, AVLB. Yeah. Well, of course we brought our bridges. I don't know what the hell they thought we were crossing, but we brought it. But it was so bad because we used it to demolish Anaconda's route because it was so black all the time. And they said, we got to get rid of these pits. And so we took our ACEs out, our armored combat earth movers, and we took those AVLBs out. And so, of course, the guys were buttoned down in the ACEs to fill in those tank holes they got dug out. Instead of digging tank holes, those ACEs were filling them in. And those AVLBs were just using the big bridge feet, and they were just demolishing everything as they went along, just knocking everything in. Which did suck coming back because then we had to replace that big ass foot.
Sure.
We're not the maintenance. We're like, okay, it's cool seeing it. I'm like, yeah. And then afterwards, we're like, fuck. Yeah. So we did a lot of those missions. I remember in the summer. I remember it picking it back up. And once you guys got your feet wet and they realized that basically the Ramadis and Fallujah calmed down, and they realized you were worse than 82nd for controlling of the area. I think that's when it just kind of calmed down, and then it was just the IEDs that they blew everything up, and we did a lot of wrecker missions then. I remember being out on a lot of wrecker missions then.
Yep.
And then once second ID came in, it all picked back up again. I'm like, oh Lord, here it goes again. That's all they're doing is they were just testing the new ones to see how far it was going to go.
Right. So if you came in October, then did you leave in October of 2004?
So I was part of the advance party. So we got to Kuwait in September.
Okay.
And then we convoyed in, and I'll tell you, we reappropriated everything on that because that base was deactivating. I don't remember what base we were on. And we were driving up there because we had a CSD unit attached with us, a decon unit attached, and then, of course, all of our engineer equipment, and whatever wasn't going up on low boys or what wasn't training up, we were driving. So we were driving a lot. But every bit of water, I mean, the wooden porta potties you saw around there, that was because we took them out of Kuwait. We're like,
nice.
Don't know if we're going to have those or not. We're taking them with. So I tell you what, we went out of, I still to this day think we look like the damn clampets going out of Kuwait, because if it wasn't tied down, it went with us tie rack.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we found connexes full of water. So we're like in the middle of the night, the scraper pulled up, we opened up its bowl, and we're just pitching all the water because we didn't know when the supplies were coming in,
Yeah.
How did it get to us? So it literally was, you're making a trip to the north there, buddy, come with us, So we went, and we were there by, I think 3 October was when we were there. And I left in, I think the 10th of October is when I got out of there.
Okay.
So you got to see the handoff with the unit that replaced us.
Yes. Yep.
And I imagine because they were fresh, they'd only been there 2 weeks. They probably didn't pick you up much, but I don't know. Did you do any missions with the 2-5, the other Marine unit that replaced us?
No. So I do remember the handshake with them, and the introduction to get the Lionesses started. And
Okay.
I do know it continued.
Yep.
But I do remember the handoff and everything, but I don't ever remember having to go back out with them because basically they wanted us to continue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, we're not going to be here. Why would you train us or keep us when you need to train these females?
Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's kind of dumb. I mean, great, you got experience, but that's only going to help you. You don't need that. You need to grow your own team.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what we told them. It's like, we'll continue to go out with our Marines, but we're not going out with the new Marines. You guys got to call that unit. So, and I do understand that. Because I always wondered, and I asked that, I'm like, why aren't we going out on any of those Marine missions? They're like, they got to take their own females.
Sure.
Pick their new ones. And I went, because we're leaving. I'm like, all right, time to go get some USO and some ice cream in Kuwait.
So fast forwarding a little bit, where did you go after Ramadi?
Well, went back to Kansas, actually. And we got back to Kansas. And at that time, I was newly divorced. And we were sitting there looking around, and they said, oh, by the way, enjoy your 9 months. And I went, what? I'm not going back over there. I'm divorced. My kid's 4 years old. I was over in Germany when she was born. From 9 months until she was 3 years old, I was over in Germany, and I spent a year and a half of that 3 years in the field in Germany. And I'm like, now I spent a year of her life. I'm like, this kid is 4 years old, and I've actively had her 2 years. And I'm like, come on. I'm like, my husband at this time has had her more than I have.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can do this. And like I said, I mean, and it is my husband now too, believe it or not. So I'm not a smart man, Jenny, but I'm not. But I come back and I'm like, I can't do this, And my mom had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, so that was my family care plan's gone, and I just went up in there and I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm pulling my family care plan. I'm getting out. I said I can't do it. I'm not having someone else raise my child. I'm going to raise my child. So I ended up getting out. I ended up going back to South Dakota, where I'm originally from, with my daughter, and then at the time, my ex-husband, he was still in Kansas because he had joined the National Guard. So he was in the National Guard and everything else like that. And so I was not a shitty mom, because my mom told me, she's like, he was a shitty husband. He was never a shitty dad. So don't you ever take that on your daughter. She's like, you know what? Because anytime you talk bad about your daughter or about your husband or your ex-husband, all you're doing is telling your daughter that she is not good too. And I always took that to heart. So I never talked bad about my husband. And actually, even when we were going through our divorce, and when we were divorced, the one thing about him, he's always been my best friend. So we were going through our nasty part of divorce, and we were in Iraq, and I'd call him up because I couldn't talk to my parents about it. And of course, he's military. And I'd be like, hey, we got to hold on to this divorce thing a second. I need to talk to you. What's going on? I said, I'd explained about a mission that went on, like the guy that got shot next to me. So I don't know how to deal with this. This dude got shot next to me. It could have been me, He's like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. I said, all right, yeah, thanks for talking me down. All right, yeah, you're still a piece of shit. Hate your guts. Yep, bye. Thanks a lot. So he was real. It's like I said, he was a shitty husband. He wasn't a shitty dad at that time. So I was going back and forth, and so I would bring him I would bring my daughter, because I wasn't working. I was, enjoying my permissive TDY and my shit ton of leave, because I got out of Iraq and didn't use it and everything else like that. So I had 4 months of leave. And I'm like, I've been driving back and forth to Kansas from South Dakota. It's only a 6-hour drive. I'm bringing her every other weekend. And one weekend, he met me halfway sometimes if he had the weekend off or something. Or sometimes I'd bring him down if I had it. And we're sitting there, and she's bawling. He's bawling. And I'm like, well, I'm the world's shittiest mom ever. Look at me. I win the award. And then I went back home to South Dakota and started packing my stuff. Mom went, "What happened?" I said, "I can't do this, Mom. I'm going back to Kansas." She's like, She's like, "Took you longer than I thought it would." I said, "You knew I'd move back?" She's like, "I knew you wouldn't do that to that little girl. She needs her dad. She needs her mom. She needs her dad in her life." She's like, "I knew you'd move back there." I said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know, Mom." She's like, "You got to figure that shit out for yourself." And all right. So I ended up moving back to Kansas. And my ex-husband helps me find a place to live and everything. And he's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "The easiest thing to do is get a job on the Army base." And he's like, "You want to join the National Guard?" I'm like, "I'm not going back." He's like, "It's a National Guard, bro. Come on." And I went, so he ended up getting in the National Guard. And I ended up going and getting a federal technician job which is the Army's best kept secret. There's two best kept secrets of the Army. And it's a federal tech program that you have to be in the National Guard for. And then what they call the AGR program, the Army Guard Reserve. So I end up being a federal tech for a while. And, so I'm working my Monday through Friday gig. Well, actually, I did 410s. So my Monday, I work Tuesday to Friday. And it was I was repairing transmissions on Fort Riley for the National Guard. I was like,
Nice.
Great. And then 1 week in a month, go in there. So I ended up having to go to, to get my next level, I have to go in and go to school. And I ended up going to Salina, Kansas, because they have, whatever, wherever you can get to go on to your E7, whatever you guys call it. So back then it was BNOC. Now they call it ALC for us. And I went to school there. And I'm like, so here's these, E6s and E7s. So I'm just a little E6. So I'm going there to, I'm watching this and I'm like, these guys are getting paid to teach about mechanics and talk all day. Well, I can do this. And it's AGR. So basically, it's all the same benefits of active duty, but you stay stationary in the state of Kansas or wherever state you are. And I'm like, So then I started watching. I ended up getting a job at Salina, Kansas, teaching maintenance. And I went, best kept secret ever, which is great because I got out with 14 years of active duty service.
Nice.
I'm like, I am done doing this. So, I threw away 14 years. So I'm like, whoo, I cut just underneath because they won't let you get back in if you have more than 15 years. So I came back in. They were all mad because I came in and I bumped immediately to the top of the promotion list. Here's a seat. I had to take a bus to come in because they didn't have positions. So here's this little E5 that went to the top of the list, maxed out on points. Well, of course I am. I've had every school, everything else. I went to combat. I mean, what else? Yeah, I got everything. And I get the first E6 promotion and they yes. So I go to this school and I get the AGR. So both, and by this time, my husband and I are back together. So it was basically, we took a year break and fixed things with us and got back together. And he too decided to go work the schoolhouse as well. So we both got AGR positions and we worked the schoolhouse down in Salina, Kansas. So he's a welder, machinist welder. So he taught good English for me. Taught machining and welding for the school, which is basically satellite schools for Fort Lee, Virginia.
Nice.
And then I taught wheeled vehicle mechanics and then some computer courses. And then I ended up continuing on and staying there basically for almost 10 years, quite honestly. And I ended up taking over the schoolhouse. I ended up becoming a first sergeant for the regiment out there, for the training regiment. And I took over the schoolhouse as the chief instructor out there. First, chief instructor, I think my title was. So,
Nice.
So that's how I ended up going out and training Marines, is because they came looking to us, figuring out how to work on the HIMARS.
Nice.
Because what is it, Pendleton out in San Diego? Is that the wrong one?
Pendleton would be just north of San Diego. If you're working on HIMARS, it was probably Pendleton, but you could have been at Miramar. Miramar's the air base down there.
Nope, it was on Pendleton. So they actually came to us first, and it had been years. It was so funny. It was years, and that's when I realized I was getting old, because they came in and it was E6 and staff sergeant, staff, yes, and he hated it. He always corrected our staff sergeant because we just SSG, and he's like, T. And I'm like, erase the T, erase the T. So we spent the whole time doing that to each other. It was pretty fun. Um, and they were a good group that came in, and it reminded. He's like, you must have worked with Marines before. I said, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. He's like, when? I said, have you ever heard of 2-4 Marines? He's like, oh yeah. I said, with them. I said, you work with them? I said, in Iraq. He went, oh. Actually, I said, I'm actually authorized to wear their patch. He's like, are you really? I said, yes. He's like, would you? No. He's like, why not? I said, because I'm not a Marine. That's not right. I said, I'm an Army soldier. I said, that's not right. But it was pretty fun. It was fun going out there, and and it's just the camaraderie and listening to all that. And I always have to have some weird thing with them. And I get out to Pendleton, and I said, I get out, and of course I'm calling their warrant officer chief. And all those little Marines look at me, and I'm like, I said, I can tell right now I said something wrong, sir. So I'm going to just call you sir until you tell me what I need to call you. He's like, I understand. It's a form of respect. And he turned to him. They call their chief, warrant officer's chief, as a sign of respect. I said, am I supposed to actually address you as chief warrant officer? He's like, or sir. I said, got it, chief warrant officer. I will fix myself. And he goes, he's like, how did you know you did something wrong? I said, oh, I watched all the little faces go, oh. He's like, that's all right. So, and my best thing about being out there is, of course, all the little Marine stuff and everything. I said, all right. I said, I got to admit, the Army's pretty bad. We got fat Army people, and we put them right out front. I said, it's like we're proud of them. I said, I know you have fat Marines. I said, but I haven't seen one. I said, I need to be, I said, I was out there for 3 weeks training them. I said, my 3 weeks here, I said, I need to see a fat Marine. They're like, oh, just wait till 11 o'clock. And I'm like, well, what happens at 11 o'clock? He's like, oh, that's fat camp. I said, what the hell? Okay, what? So there's the towel belt. He's like, come and get your towel, boy. Come and get your towel. And I'm like, are you fucking with me right now? And he's like, no. And so, of course, this is a little corporal, which, now I have fondness for. And I said, he's like, well, haven't you ever heard it? That's what we'd sing when they said it. He's like, come and get your towel now. Come and get your towel. That's when we all go to chow. And I went, okay. He's like, well, he's like, the music before that, he's like, watch a half an hour before. He's like, we'll let you know. We'll just take a break then. I said, okay. He's like, then watch out the window. I said, okay. He's like, then you'll see all the little fat Marines. I said, seriously? He's like, yeah. So okay. He's like, oh, here it is. You got to stop. All right. So we all go to the window. Me and my other instructor, they do too. And I said, well, where are they? He's like, hold on. They take them. They're slow. And I'm like, you're fucking with me? And he's like, no. He's like, here come the fat Marines. And sure enough, here. And now I wouldn't call them real fat. There was a few fluffy ones. But I'm like, where are they all going? Do they get early chow? He's like, oh no. He's like, they get an extra PT. I went, oh, he's like, yeah, they get extra PT in the morning, in the afternoon. So that's fat camp. I went, oh, you guys are mean. I said, you guys are mean. He's like, yeah, we just hide our fat ones. I said, no, I put them out in front.
We called them pork chop platoon, and I had the privilege to run pork chop platoon for a little bit, and so
when he started singing "Come and Get Your Chow," I laughed though.
It's too funny.
So, with all those years and you training all these different people, did anybody know you were special? You were different when
I was special?
especially when, and I'm not trying to mean like in a rude way, but you have a very distinct history. You are literally the first Lioness. And
it wasn't until when the VA started playing it.
Okay.
For a while there, that's when people started really figuring out who I was. So then they're like, "Oh my God, you're the one on that Lioness." So I did get a few in the years. I also, because while I was in school, when I was at that schoolhouse, I went on NPR. They did a thing with NPR. We went on Katie Couric.
Yeah.
She is not a nice person.
I've heard that.
She's not. She's mean to the little hair and makeup people. I don't like anyone that's mean to help. We went up into Congress and we talked to Congress, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
Where else did we go? And we did a lot around the countryside, different ones. Oh, we went up into Washington, D.C., and we went to the Women's Memorial Museum.
Oh, wow.
And we did a big thing up there with a bunch of people. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, that was neat, just walking around, because it was Shannon, myself, Nava, someone else. So there's 4 of us that got together then. So it's been a few times that we've gotten together over the years. And so actually it's kind of interesting is our chief warrant officer, he had cancer, pretty devastating cancer. And he'd gone around, and we called it his great last goodbye tour. I'm sure he would hate to hear me say that, but I think that's what it was. He was going around seeing everybody, and he ended up going into remission. So I think if anyone could kick its ass, it would have been him. But one of the things he is a historian for the veterans of the 1st Engineer Battalion. He'd been in the battalion twice, actually, before. So he'd been in there once with us and then before. And so he is part of the veterans of 1st Engineers. And so they do reunions. And he had been after us to go up to, last year it was up, a couple years ago, it was when DC was really rough, and it was up in DC. And I'm like, hey, I don't go into any state that doesn't have reciprocity with Florida's concealed carry. So, and DC don't let me take little friendly things up into there. If you catch my drift. Yeah. I just want to go up in there. And I said, it's pretty rough. And he's like, all right, I got it. And then the next year he ended up getting real sick. So none of us went. So this year he's like, he talked to all of us. And he's like, hey, it's actually in Chicago, which I'm not that great fond of, but he's like, reunion, and it's in the 1st Infantry Division Museum, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah.
And he's like, would you guys go? Well, he talked to me. He's like, would you go? I said, yeah, I'll go. I said, it actually works out pretty good. I got a wedding up in Michigan the weekend. He's like, you guys on Monday, I'll just come down from the weekend. I said, I'm retired. What else do I got to do? And he's like, okay. He's like, no, I got a bigger ask. He's like, how do I get the other Lionesses to come? I said, all right, you got to work on Shannon. I said, if you can get Shannon to go, and she ain't been doing shit hardly. So if you can get her to go, you can get everyone to go. He's like, well, how do we get her to go? I said, you got to get her wife to go. If you can get her wife to go, she'll go. And so he started a big, huge group together. And so it sounds like out of the original 19, about 12 of us are actually going to be.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's good.
That's a good number, man.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so, I mean, it's like any unit. There might be 19, but you ain't friends with all 19 of them.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's
yeah.
So the 12 I'm pretty cool with.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we've been running our mouths for about a little over an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes. Any parting thoughts? Anything that Ramadi means to you specifically, or anything else really that we didn't cover?
The one thing I've always thought that was, I think my parting thought, and it's what I get asked the most, especially now in this changing society with, are they with the units opening up to females and everything else, and everyone's like, well, you did the Lioness missions. You were in a heavily dominated MOS that was more towards a male dominated, thing. She's like, what do you think on women in combat? You've got to be a big prior, push for that. And everyone's always kind of surprised that, actually, I'm not a big pusher for females in combat missions. Is that not the weirdest thing either? And I'll tell you the reason why.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Because first and foremost, I do believe that not every female can do the job, because if you can't do a male standard PT test and you can't do a male standard part for the infantry, then you shouldn't be an infantryman. But I also think a male is the same way, because I've met a few males out there that can't do those same standard either.
Right.
So if you can't do the job, you don't need to be out there doing it. It's not like, all right, it's like the Army. If you can't do the job, you become a cook. I'm not saying everybody could cook, because I've ate the meals in the Army. So, but that's what they did to everybody. Everybody can be a cook. No, they can't.
Right.
So, and I think that's the one thing about it. And the one worry about it is I always worry, Us three are in a foxhole or in a firefight. I get captured, you get captured, he gets captured. Who are you going to worry about first?
Yeah, I'm going to worry about you.
You're going to worry about me.
I know what the enemy does.
Yep, everybody knows what the enemy does. See, and that's the biggest thing with combat. And why I'm not a big predominant push towards the combat mission. Am I willing to take that role on for myself? I don't have a problem with doing it, but I didn't think I put myself in that position per se. So now, would I ever want my daughter to be in a combat? No, but I also don't want my daughter to be in the military at all. You know, I joined the Army hoping that I would never have my children be in a war. We know that will never happen because no one will ever agree. If you have two people, they'll have two opinions and they will never agree.
Right.
You know, unfortunately. Yep. But I mean, so that's the one thing about it. I do think, and I have met females out there that can do the infantry job, the Ranger women out there that are kicking ass. My God, more power to them. That's amazing and good for you know, but I do think there's roles and there's missions in combat for females. So I can't say that I don't think women should be in combat. It's just the combat heavy, like an infantryman. You know, it's just that's a rough mission. But there's places in there for like the Lioness. It was a needed mission, and everybody forgets. It's a true saying when I say that Molly Pitcher was, you know, in 1770.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's been going along a lot longer than we've been doing it. So it's out there and it's doing it. So I think my weirdest thing with everything. But my Lioness time, I've always enjoyed it. Didn't always enjoy it. I'm glad I did it. I enjoyed seeing the items and some of the stuff I did. And I, of course, would never, you know, I would never do it so somebody else would have to do my job for me.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a feeling shared by all of us by far. Yeah. I'd rather step forward and let you. I'm not going to have you pick up my slack ever. Nope. Doesn't matter what it is.
Nope. I don't care. Even to this day, I'll still, we need to move this. I'll be right there in the thick of it because, you know, I'm not going to ask you to do something I ain't going to be able to do.
Well, Ranie, thank you so much for your time.
Nope, thanks for reaching out.
I mean this sincerely. You're a legend. They asked of you something that nobody should have asked. And it's fucking badass that you were able to do it. I hope we treated you all right. I feel like we did in 2004. But I imagine there were some rough moments. Our company specifically was an interesting band of characters. Oh, yes, and so there's no telling who you were with. But there
were some good in the Rainmaker platoon. There were teams. There were some good guys in there. I enjoyed running with them there. And like I said, I don't distinctly ever remember going, "Oh my God, I hate everyone with that."
Well, that's good. That's good.
Good. Small victories.
I went, holy shit. Good thing you went to the Marines. Woo.
yeah, that's accurate.
I bet I can name them.
Oh, that Kevlar story still blows. Why are you wearing that bullet? That Kevlar's compromised. It's my lucky Kevlar. I'm like, oh no.
All right. Well, we'll let you take off. I'll be in touch, and I hope to talk to you before another 20 years.
Yeah, that'd be a good time.
We're both running around in a wheelchair.
Sounds good.
All right.
It was great seeing you. Thank you. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe for future episodes on your favorite podcast service.